welcome to the video, what to do when my knees are painful in kneeling. Now it's a really common problem and you're not alone, and I'm not suggesting that I'm going to give you some quick fix that suddenly is going to give you the ability to kneel happily. But there perhaps there is something you can do to try and get yourself so that you can go from an intolerable position to something you can tolerate, to perhaps something you can even start utilising as a baseline position. Now, generally how I work is that I want to take people's capacity for movement and make it bigger. So if you can't kneel, then your capacity for movement is reduced. If we can kneel, then we open up that capacity to something a bit more advanced, and then that leads us to another set of movements that make a bit more advanced, and then we get bigger and bigger. So this is all about your capacity to move and use your body in all the wondrous ways that we could use our bodies. So if you're watching this video, it's probably because you want to try and learn how to kneel. So great, we've ticked the first box. You actually have got some motivation that wants to get you there. Now, you may have had some kind of medical intervention at some point that has meant that your knees are more sensitive, such as certainly a knee replacement. You know, a great big scar across the front of the knee is not going to be that comfortable to kneel on. But does that mean that you shouldn't do it? No. A knee replacement isn't designed to give you the capacity to kneel again, but it doesn't mean that you're prohibited from trying to do it. Same with any other knee surgery. Quite often we get really sensitive with the knee, and generally it just comes down to relearning that it's okay to kneel on it and kind of getting rid of those anxieties in your head and desensitizing the neural tissue that's new, basically. I can't think of many situations or any off the top of my head where I would say kneeling is completely prohibited, unless it's particularly aggravating to whatever you have, you know. So if it's going to ruin your ability to be able to walk around for the rest of the day, then you know, you've got to work out your priorities there. So that said, if we're happy that we're going to try and get kneeling to work a bit better for us, there's a few things on the market that I've bought actually, just have a look at. So Amazon and Decathlon actually do some, if you just put in kneeling pads, yoga kneeling pads or anything like that, you'll usually have loads of things available now. So these are one of them, and they're quite nice, they're quite cheap. I don't think they're much more than a tenner, if that. And it's just like basically a bit of strong foam, a slight little dip for the knee to go into, and then spread. Now that's quite comfortable. You get them in a set of pairs, and you can just kneel on that, and that might make things a little bit more comfortable. And if you need to desensitize, you probably just spend a bit of time every day just putting weight on it and just moving around on it and getting that tissue used to it before maybe doing the exercises. So they work quite nicely. They basically just spread the weight, so rather than you feeling it like you're on one point, it's just spreading that weight. So they're quite nice, and they can actually also be used as wrist supports, although I've got a different video where I probably wouldn't use these, I'd use something else. But yeah, you can have them for different things. I mean, you could use them in the garden if you wanted to as well. I'm sure they're pretty cleanable. The other thing that you can get that you can buy, now a lot of mats are made of this, really nice squidgy stuff. I tend to not encourage people to use these for class because they stretch a bit. So when we're pushing into positions, it just ends up sort of being like you're kneading a piece of bread and it just gets longer. So they're not ideal for that, but they are fine if you're just going to stretch yourself on it and just have a comfy surface. But they also double up quite nicely as a practical and light kneeling pad, and you only need the one. And so again, you're just getting this distribution of weight bearing, just spreading a little bit more through a softer surface. That might feel more comfortable. So again, if you just put in kneeling knee pad support, stuff like that, it's all under there, and you just scan through and see what you can find. So but that's quite nice as well. Now if you don't want to buy anything, in simple terms, you can use a towel. So it does a similar thing. I guess in some ways the benefits of some of the bought things is that the properties of the material maybe are a little bit better for supporting weight than a towel, but you know, it's still going to soften the contact point with the floor. So you can fold up a towel, and to be fair, you could play around with how deep you make that fold. And then often in class, because we tend to use the foam pads, I would suggest people put a foam pad underneath, which again, it's not quite as good as some of the kneeling pads, because it gives a little bit, so you can end up still getting a bit of a pressure point on it. But it's still, you know, it's a halfway house somewhere in there. And you could get a few layers of foam. If you could, you probably buy some foam fairly cheaply, and you could play around with that sort of thing. So ultimately, the thing to do is not be scared of the pain, but be respectful of it, and to use strategies just to spread the weight bearing surface, like I've said with those tools, and then just to spend time on a regular basis just coming onto the hands and knees and just beginning to work those knees using, you know, just a bit of mindful presence as you do it, and just saying, well, I'll see if I can do 30 seconds. You know, maybe to begin with you can't even manage 5 seconds, but what if by the end of the week practicing it you've managed to get up to 30 seconds? Well, that's a great improvement. That means you could start doing some kneeling exercises. So those are my tips for what to do if your knees are sore for kneeling. It's not an exhaustive set of tips, but maybe it's been of use to some of you.